as I just said in the intro, I don't think I've ever seen buzz this big on a topic. I mean, every time I go out in public and walk around at least 10, 15 people, I mean, if I see like, the guy comes to clean the pool or something, he doesn't bring it up. But I mean, if I get around a gas station, a grocery store, anywhere, multiple people bring up Nick Fuentes and this big battle, and everybody thinks he's being ganged up on, and he's a really smart guy, and wow, they heard he was a bad guy, but now they love his show, and the show's been big forever. He's been around 8 years or so, 9 years, but it's exploded. And I know when something explodes like that, I called him a week and a half ago, and I said, you better get ready for the big attacks.
And who knows, maybe in the future we'll have Nick on as well to have a conversation with him. But it's been a very interesting, specifically, Vinny, I would say it's been a very interesting last 3 weeks.
And Nick said it himself, from his mouth, he's on a generational run. And right now, I don't care what anybody says, he is freaking on fire.
You believe Nick, though. I get a feeling that you believe Nick.
You know what it is, Matt? Because, okay, name the person that can't even be on YouTube. He can't be on YouTube because of the stuff that he says. They froze his bank account. I guess he had like $500,000 in an account. Yeah. They froze him. He's at the Capitol. He wasn't. They made it seem like he was running into the Capitol. He was on the grounds where you can do it.
Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining me. I have a tremendous show planned for you today, and I use the word I specifically because it's just going to be me and you. We're going to depart from the sports world in the first part of this show. At the back end of the show, I'm not sure when we'll get there. Maybe an hour and a half before we get to the back end of the show. I will have a take on As the WNBA Turns, as I like to do, but the majority of today's show is going to be spent on Nick Fuentes. And it's going to be spent on Nick Fuentes because his importance, relevance, traction, everything keeps elevating by the hour, by the minute, certainly by the day. Yesterday, I watched 2.5 hour, maybe it was 3 hours, I can't remember, but I watched the entire thing, a conversation between Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones. And watching that, I was so thoroughly impressed with Nick Fuentes that, it made me recalculate, and again, I was impressed with Nick Fuentes, but I was also concerned that he's more dangerous, more formidable, and more backed than perhaps I had even anticipated previously. And so I feel like I have to go back at this topic. He's doing, I think, something later today with Andrew and Tristan Tate. He's, as Alex Jones said there, he's inescapable at this moment. And I don't think it's by accident. And I think it's a conversation that I'm going to have to stay involved with over time, not just today, but over time, because I'm not sure if anyone else is willing to go where I'm willing to go. And even have this conversation and understand, or even have the understanding of why this conversation is important. As I've mentioned previously, most people are afraid of Nick Fuentes. They're afraid of the Groypers. They're afraid of their social media getting spammed. They're afraid of being harassed personally. And it's not that I don't have those fears. It's just that I don't care. I sincerely don't care. And it's also, I'm not bothered by the Groypers. I don't see them as evil. I don't see them as horrible people that must be destroyed. I see them as young men who are tired, frustrated, confused, and they've been handed a leader in Nick Fuentes, that they're following behind because he seems to be the only one speaking for them. And it's a mistake. And it's a conversation that Christians and mature Christians need to be involved in trying to address the issues, the justifiable issues that young men, young white men in particular, feel. And there's a conversation that needs to be had about the overarching narrative and guiding principle of American foreign and domestic policy that again, Genesis 12:3, and that somehow if we just bend over and accept anything the Israeli government does and co-sign it, and there's no criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu, and I know, oh, what do you mean you can criticize Benjamin Netanyahu? Only after you go over to Israel, kiss the wall, put a hat on, and all of your criticism is really pointless and meaningless, then you can criticize Israel without being called an anti-Semite. But for someone like me that knew virtually nothing about Israel, the Jewish faith, Judaism, any of that 5 years ago, and call me stupid, say I can't believe he's saying that. Whitlock's too smart. I'm not too smart to be as dumb as I was. I was too unread. I was too caught up in myself. Like most people, I was too disconnected from the Bible. I wasn't serious about my faith. And so, yes, I 5 years ago, I thought Jews were some sort of super Christian. And I've shared with you guys on this show that I gave a speech down in Florida for, I believe, David Horowitz. And I talked all about Jesus Christ. And I got swamped afterwards with people running up to me. Why are you talking about Jesus Christ? Why are you throwing that up in our face? And I was sitting there like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about Jesus Christ. And then these were Jewish people, and they were telling me that I was trolling them by talking about Jesus Christ, and I was oblivious. I had no idea that they hated Jesus Christ. And that sounds crazy for someone that was raised in the church, that has any understanding of the Bible. But it was my reality. I was that stupid. I had paid that little attention. There were only certain aspects of the biblical story that I concerned myself with, knew anything about. But now I know. And someone that thought a rabbi was a super Christian and just had no negative feelings towards Jewish people or Israel, I really just didn't care. But, I start getting branded an anti-Semite, and I start getting trolled and people going after me viciously, and I'm like, come on now. There's got to be far more dangerous people than me. I talk primarily about sports, overwhelmingly about sports. I don't involve myself in foreign affairs or have strong opinions on foreign affairs. Then I start looking up at my Wikipedia page, and I start looking up at how Jeremy Boring and these other people are talking about me because I'm pointing out things that fair criticism, in my view. And fair criticism because, one, there's no one, probably Jesse Lee Peterson, but more critical of black people and my own so-called tribe than me. So why wouldn't I be critical and able to discuss other tribes and criticisms I have if they lean into a victimhood mentality? I don't like victimhood mentality. And I don't care who the alleged victim is. I like victimhood. And I don't care what tribe wraps themselves in victimhood. I'm going to be critical of that. I think it's destructive. I don't like individuals, regardless of tribe, color, or whatever, who lean into, I'm a victim. And they think they conceal their mentality of victimhood, but they don't. It's clear as day. So I'm going to get into Alex Jones' conversation with Nick Fuentes and give you my take on it, what I think potentially is the agenda behind Nick Fuentes, what I think his motives might be. I have reached no conclusions, but I'm going to have this discussion because just like what Alex Jones is saying, just like what Patrick Bet-David is saying, just like what I've been saying, this man's following is getting larger by the day. And it's the negligence of Christian men is the reason why his following is getting larger by the day. And we can't operate in fear. And for those of us that accept Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, we have to be willing to stand on that and let the chips fall where they may, or we're going to surrender young people that I love. I'm just keeping it around. I want to be careful here, but trust me, I've employed groypers and employ a groyper. And when my cousin my Fuentes, and there's certainly a lot of white kids that have fallen in love with Nick Fuentes. And I just want to offer them some cautious words of advice and try to steer them back on a path that's concerned about their eternal salvation. Not winning some little feud over Twitter, not winning some feud over social media, not scoring points against the leftists or whatever, but pushing them, directing them towards a path of concern about their eternal. I'm not. Let me pause there for a second and unpack this in the proper order so that you can understand it and so that I'm not going too far. And before I get into that, I want to thank our friends at PreBorn. You want to talk about a Christian organization that serves God? Nothing does it better than PreBorn. PreBorn supports our view, the biblical view that life begins at conception and that each baby's life inside the womb is as precious as babies outside of the womb. They provide expectant mothers an ultrasound, introduce that baby's heartbeat, a visual image of that baby to the mother while the baby's in the womb, and now that woman is twice as likely to choose life, and that's where PreBorn really steps up, and supports that woman and child for up to 2 years. PreBorn does amazing work. It saves babies' lives every day. They've saved nearly 300,000 babies during the existence of PreBorn. You guys know I've introduced you to Dan Steiner. We've had him on the show. You know what PreBorn does. And they do it because we donate to PreBorn. We pay for all the good that PreBorn does. You can do it $28 at a time, $280 at a time. You can do a monthly donation. You can do, as I did earlier this week, just a spur of the moment. Hey, God, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about serving you. Let me give to PreBorn to show you. You remember in the Old Testament, they do all that animal sacrifice? Well, I'm telling you, let's do some financial sacrifice in the name of God to honor him and to let him know we're thinking about him. We're thinking about how we can serve him. Saving babies' lives makes God smile. It'll make you smile. It'll make your wife, your kids smile. 2 ways to give: pound 250, say the keyword baby, pound 250, say the keyword baby, or give the way that I prefer to give. PreBorn.com/fearless. Don't forget when you're there, PreBorn.com/fearless, there's a little box they'll have to check. Who told you about PreBorn? Jason Whitlock. Make sure you click that box. All right, thank you. All right, so let's delve into Nick Fuentes and why, and we'll start here with me calling Nick Fuentes Mr. President. Grape or die, I think, is his slogan. I think that Nick Fuentes is eligible to be the president in 2036. He's just 26. I think you got to be 35 to be president. So in 2036, he's going to be a serious candidate for president. In 2028, he's going to have incredible influence over who the Republican nominee and who the president is. I think his influence with young men is growing so rapidly, so swiftly. He's going to be a major playmaker in presidential politics starting in 2028. The test run for his influence actually started, I believe, in 2021, 2022. The guy named Joe Kent that was running for the House, congressional House seat, I believe in the state of Washington. And he got into a scrap with Nick Fuentes, some back and forth. He disavowed Nick Fuentes after maybe initially co-signing Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes and the Groypers went after Joe Kent. And that battle between, and Joe Kent lost a very close race, but that battle between Nick Fuentes and Joe Kent, Nick Fuentes argues, is at the root of the problem between Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. And there's probably some truth to that. Nick Fuentes in 2022, that's 3 years ago. This is a 23-year-old kid that's influencing a congressional race, a decorated military veteran, Joe Kent, someone that had been involved in the CIA, Joe Kent. He's costing him, influencing that election process. This isn't some controversial, up for debate opinion. It's common knowledge. It's on Wikipedia. It's everywhere. And so when I hear Nick talk about this, about, hey, this is what's at the root of my conflict with Tucker Carlson, because Joe Kent was someone that Donald Trump backed, Joe Kent was someone that Tucker Carlson backed, and Joe Kent is someone that lost a very close race. But I think Tucker Carlson's concern about Nick Fuentes goes beyond Joe Kent, and it is connected to the thing that's being called noticing all over social media. And the noticing is related to how much influence Israel has on American domestic and foreign policy. And someone like myself who sees Tucker Carlson as a force for good and someone that has credibility and has a massive following and has traveled the world and has interviewed world leaders. And yes, his father was in the CIA, raises eyebrows for me, but people are capable of having an awakening and pivoting from their previous behavior and previous worldview. I raise my hand and say that I am one of those people. At the moment, I believe Tucker Carlson is one of those people that has pivoted from his pro-establishment viewpoints from 30 years ago and all the naivety that he had 30 years ago, 20 years ago. It's all been washed away. And Tucker and Candace Owens, I think, believe that, hey, we are at a point where the Overton window, hey, and thanks some to Nick Fuentes. I'm sure they're willing to say thanks some to Nick Fuentes. The Overton window has shifted to where we can have a conversation about, hey, what's really driving our foreign policy, our involvement in endless wars, our involvement in the Middle East, our regime change movements in the Middle East, the endless wars and conflicts. We can have a discussion about that and ask, is Israel, is AIPAC, are these organizations, is what happened in World War II driving everything that we're doing in 2025? Is what happened 80 years ago and the narrative built around what happened in World War II and World War I? Can we have a discussion about that and ask, are we doing things that serve America, or is America just a country doing things that serve Israel? It's a question that can be asked and should be discussed, and it should not be, well, in Genesis 12:3, God made a promise to Abraham, and therefore we can't talk about that. Therefore, we can't have a discussion about that. That's all been blown up. And so Tucker Carlson, and perhaps in Nick Fuentes' mind, Tucker Carlson has hijacked his issue, Nick Fuentes' issue. He's hijacked it, and that Nick believes Tucker's taking unfair pot shots at him. Tucker Carlson, and I have not talked to Tucker Carlson, have not talked to Candace Owens. I'm not caping for anyone or giving thoughts that have been handed to me by anyone. I'm a culture critic. I'm an observer. I observe what's going on, and I reach my own conclusions. But perhaps what they're saying is that Nick Fuentes' tribalism and his irreverent, unnecessary, make these adjectives that I'm adding are important. They're suggesting perhaps, because it's what, if I were them, this is what I would be saying. It's like, okay, we're having a discussion and we're helping people, we're walking people through the process of saying, hey man, there's a generation from 80 years ago and their thinking that has driven American foreign policy and domestic policy, and perhaps we need to rethink that thinking. They feel like they're having a responsible conversation and getting responsible people to start leaning their way. And they potentially believe that Nick Fuentes, and I know that Nick's saying, hey man, this is the same thing they said about Patrick Buchanan. But maybe this time they're right. Patrick Buchanan was ahead of the curve. But what they're saying is Nick Fuentes' tribalism, irreverent and unnecessary bigotry, is clouding up and undermining this much more important conversation about what's really been driving American domestic and foreign policy. And they're saying, like, hey, Nick is a burden. He's going to be used, his style and approach, his tribalism, his unnecessary, irreverent racial bigotry is going to undermine this much larger conversation and is going to actually justify the laws that are being put in place in different states and potentially federally in place that say, hey, there's these certain things you cannot say and cannot discuss, or you're violating anti-Semitism laws. And so they want to paint anybody that wants to have this discussion about, like, hey man, are we too closely tied to Israel? Have we put ourselves in a position where Israel's this special place where in America you can say whatever you want about America, and that's your freedom of speech? You can demonize the founding fathers. You can do whatever you want. Say whatever you want about Americans and America. But when it comes to Israel and Israelis and Jews and Bibi Netanyahu, you better tread carefully. You could be violating our speech laws. And perhaps they're arguing that Nick Fuentes, while pretending to be a critic of AIPAC and Israeli influence, he's actually a cartoon character that's been planted to paint anybody that does that as a bigot, as a racist, as someone beyond the pale, as someone that can't be trusted, can't be taken seriously, and is actual justification for the anti-Semitism laws. And if you just look a little bit deeply, and I shared with people this, I believe, earlier in the week about, like, because it goes deeper than Owen Benjamin, the comedian that I referenced that put together a 25-minute video talking about Nick Fuentes using his own words to paint Nick Fuentes as some sort of sexual deviant. He just played Nick Fuentes' own words, and I know Nick Fuentes has an explanation of, oh, I'm just joking. That was just sarcasm. That's just me being funny. I used to be 26. I used to be 25. I was 24. I was 23. There's, pedophilia, liking super young girls, boys, or whatever. I never joked about those things. Wasn't funny. Never was. And trust me, when I was Nick Fuentes' age, I was far more crude than him. Far more. But there was like certain things I'm just not joking about. I'm not engaging in any sort of behavior, running around with anybody, on camera with anybody, that even leaned that direction or gave off a whiff that I might be involved with something like that. And so when I watched Owen Benjamin's 25-minute video, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know this. And when I listened to Tucker and what he insinuates about Nick Fuentes, I'm like, oh, this is what he's talking about, what Owen Benjamin's talking about. And then, and I haven't been able to go all the way through this because I didn't see it until this morning, but there have been people that have gone far deeper down the rabbit hole on the Groypers and Nick Fuentes as it relates to sexual deviance. Far deeper than Owen Benjamin. Far more receipts than Owen Benjamin put in his 25-minute video. And so when I look at what Tucker and Candace were suggesting in a short video, now I'm starting to see, here's the foundation of that. It's a red flag. And so watching Nick and Alex Jones yesterday and thinking about, I was really impressed with Nick Fuentes. Like, wow, listen how polished he is. Comes off likable. Alex Jones is selling him well. His answers seem right. I'm like, a 26-year-old can talk this deeply about foreign policy, can do all this, and can, present himself. With Alex Jones, he presented himself really well. Too good to be true is what I thought. And that just made me want to look even deeper. And I was like, hey man, this smells a tiny bit like Stephen A. Smith. It's just far more polished. And so when I look up, Patrick Bet-David is hyping up Nick Fuentes. Oh, he has hyped up Stephen A. Smith. When I've seen all the conservatives run around and hype up Stephen A. Smith and treat him like he's some credible person rather than some buffoon that's been given a thesaurus, and Bob Iger has put a battery in his back, and Stephen A. Smith, what line is it? Where did Stephen A. Smith finally cross a line where he had to backpedal a little bit? Well, he's like, I don't care about the Epstein deal. And it's just funny and perhaps coincidental that all of these people that are emerging as political leaders and have emerged as political leaders. What's the line Trump won't seem to cross? Epstein, pedophilia, young girls and young boys. That seems to be the piece, this sexual deviance deal that if you've listened to me on this show, what have I told you about the rappers, the politicians, the celebrities, the people with all the money? What ties them together? Sexually compromised. They know the websites you visit. They've read your text messages and emails. And the price of admission into the little special club is sexual deviance. Oh, but not Nick Fuentes. Well, according to Owen Benjamin, according to others, and I'm going to reach out to a guy, I think his name's Chris Brunet. He's done a major deep dive on Nick Fuentes. And so when I see Donald Trump like, well, we're going to release the Epstein files. No, we're not. Stephen A. Smith, I don't care about the Epstein files. No one should. I'm going out and kicking it this weekend. The wire, and maybe it's all just a smear, but it's like what I saw with Owen Benjamin and what the Chris Brunet, if I'm saying his name properly, I haven't met him, I'm researching this stuff in real time. You know, they're coming with receipts. They're coming with his own words. They're coming with things he's joking and flirting about and talking about. And it's like when I see someone that wants to be the leader of young people and wants to be a voice speaking truth to power, it's like, hey, maybe you did crack all these jokes. Come on out and say, you know what? I'm a sincere Catholic. I'm a sincere Christian. I shouldn't have done that. That was me being an idiot and a retard. Me sitting down with destiny. F-A-G. I dang near said it, but I just don't want to do it because I don't want to dirty this up. And now, guess where Nick Fuentes is today? What's going to be happening over Twitter or Rumble or wherever? Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate. What are the stories about them? What are the allegations that have been haunting them? Pimping young girls. And now Nick Fuentes and Andrew Tate, they'll all be getting Twitter traction and social media relevance, talking as friends today. There's a thread that binds all these people. And perhaps Tucker and Candace are aware of this. And that's their objection. And that perhaps Nick Fuentes isn't trying to lead America to any sort of greatness. He's not trying to take them back to 1776. He's perhaps just another tool and distraction and a way to make sure that this sexual deviancy deal that seems to be ruling the globe doesn't get exposed. And actually that there's maybe a Trojan horse being set up to install this little 26-year-old kid as a major political force with the sexual deviance hid just beneath the surface. This, I want to share with you all, and I'm going to play some of this stuff from Nick Fuentes, but this was another thing I learned last night, this morning. Did you know, and maybe many of you did, that some 35-year-old dying man in France in December of 2020 sent Nick Fuentes $250,000 in Bitcoin? Man in France, 35 years old, dying, writes a suicide note, sends, I think there was an AP story written about that, yeah, sends $500,000 in Bitcoin to U.S. far-right groups. And Nick Fuentes got half of that. Bunch of, maybe 20 other people got the other $250,000, but Nick Fuentes got $250,000 in Bitcoin in December of 2020. At the time, and I went and looked it up, I think Bitcoin was worth about 25K, 26K, somewhere in there. And now, I think yesterday it's trading around 120. That, I'm no math major, but that made 5 times the value now. So if you got 250,000, maybe it's worth a little more than $1 million, $1.3 million, somewhere in there. But some guy in France who's dying writes a suicide note. I'm not sure how he knew Nick Fuentes, but sends him all this money. That sounds like a payoff to me. That just some random dying guy. That sounds like a payoff to me. That sounds like how someone that wanted to funnel some money to people, that's a story they would concoct. Hey, there's a guy in France that's dying. He's written a suicide note. He's going to kill himself, and he's going to send $500K in Bitcoin to these certain alt-right groups, and Nick Fuentes is going to get half of that $500,000. And I don't, is France, you know, we kind of laugh at them, call them soft, whatever, but it seems to be a somewhat important place on the planet. And is it a coincidence that Candace Owens is having all these problems in France with Emmanuel Macron and his wife/husband, Brigitte Macron? This free gifted $250,000. To me, it sounds like, hey, I hit 17 straight three-pointers and Big House Gaines gave me a scholarship on the spot. And the free $250,000 in Bitcoin that's sent over from a dying guy in France. I wouldn't be on camera everywhere to, oh, what a victim I am. They froze my bank accounts. I've been so mistreated. I'm this, I'm that. I'm the real guy, the disaffected white guy that's been mistreated. How many of you disaffected white guys got $250,000 in Bitcoin at age 21 from some dude in France? That sounds like some sort of privilege to me. I wouldn't, if someone, that's more than $1 million someone just handed you. I don't know if my story would be, oh, what a victim I am. Oh, look at the oppression I faced. Some guy dying in France just sent me a bunch of money. The guy, I want to show you, did we pull up the tweet where Nick cops to being a millionaire? Oh, yeah, we did. Let me tell the whole story here. So Andrew Tate yesterday, day before, I can't, is tweeting at Nick Fuentes. Andrew Tate, let me read the tweet. Nobody can stop you from being a winner. Groypers speak like a conquered people. Tough love is to ignore their influence and fight back. Stop crying nonstop. You can't win without grass-level self-control and strength. Let me stop there. I agree with Andrew Tate as it relates to that. He's like, hey, man, all this whining and crying about how you're such a victim and they debanked me and they took me off social media. Like, Andrew Tate's like, hey, man, toughen up. There's worse things. And there's worse things. And so quit leading with that. Fuentes hears it differently and says, you too, huh? And he's basically saying, oh, okay, you're jumping on my back. And then Tristan Tate jumps in. No, Nick, he's saying be a groyper and influential and a millionaire and physically strong. Don't just be angry. And this is what I found fascinating. Nick Fuentes, I'm already an influential millionaire. I'm already an influential millionaire. Candace Tucker and Elon are calling me a Fed anti-Semite. I'm fighting back. I will never ignore Jewish corruption. I'm already an influential millionaire. The guy's 26. And he's pretending to be some victim. And he's pretending to be, I'm the little guy. And Tucker Carlson's got 17 million followers. You're a millionaire at 26. Some guy in France gave you your first million, basically. This sounds like Trump. And I don't mean that as a disparage to Donald Trump. I mean it as like, does the average American, white, black, yellow, brown, whatever, man, does he get $1 million handed to him? Does he convince a whole group of people, groypers, to send him money while he pretends that he's some disaffected victim? Guy's a millionaire. This is young Stephen A. Smith. He may not have got his $20 million a year deal yet, but he's on the way. He's a millionaire before Stephen A. Smith was a millionaire. Before I was. Long before. This isn't a victim. And he needs to quit playing that role. And I just want to come all the way, put all the chips on the table. Some of you will hear it, his crowd will hear it. And Whitlock just is unfairly going after Nick Fuentes. It's not true. It's not. And Whitlock's feelings are hurt because Nick Fuentes yesterday called me a dishonest fat scum. The fat scum, I mean, it really doesn't bother me. I call myself much worse on a daily basis. Dishonest does bother me because I'm not dishonest. I'm not. I may be wrong. I may have the wrong opinion, and I'm open. Maybe I got the wrong opinion on Nick Fuentes. But I just don't like what I'm seeing from Nick Fuentes. He's not responding to things because I've done no vicious attack on Nick Fuentes. I've questioned, like, hey man, call yourself a Catholic, Christ is king. This tribalism doesn't hold up. It's the wrong approach. You're taking your people away from salvation. You're having them lean, and Andrew Tate even called, you're having them lean into anger. Anger and bitterness, that doesn't fix anything. That destroys things. How are you, there's some role that they've come up with for you. I'm trying to understand it. I'm not, at this point, buying this organic rise. When I go back and look at newspaper articles written about you when you were 18 and 19 years old at Boston College. Huh? Why? Because you wore a Trump hat at an anti-Trump rally? That gets you on the front page of the Boston Globe? Really? When I look at, someone help me out, 2017, I think, when the Charlottesville deal happened, that hoax, and I'm looking at the major newspapers write about you at the Charlottesville deal, this doesn't feel organic. Nick Fuentes, he's a freshman at Boston College, they got stories about him. He goes to Charlottesville. And I'm reading an AP story that's leading with Nick Fuentes at Charlottesville and his role in that. And then that's what gets me like, well, hold on. You were center stage, according to the media, at Charlottesville. And then you show up on January 6th, someone hands you a megaphone, and you're telling people to storm the barricades, and we've taken over the Capitol, and nothing happens to you. It raises red flags. It makes people question things. The left, the Democrats, who have treated Charlottesville as if it was the battle at Little Bighorn, as if it's one of the most historic, evil events that ever happened. You're there. They write about you being there, and then you show up a few years later at January 6th. You're on camera, on mic, telling people to do things that are being treated like, oh, these are the worst people on the planet, throw them underneath the jail, and nothing happens, and I hear your explanation. I was 500 feet away. Nothing happened. You can go to Charlottesville and be written about center stage, and you can go to January 6th and nothing happens. And we're acting as if like, oh, well, the Democrats had a set of rules. And I don't want to take the words, I'm going to let him explain. They got 3 criteria. You either had to be in a militia, you had to enter the Capitol, or you had to fight someone, as if these were the rules, as if they had any rules. If they wanted to put you down for January 6th, they invented a crime. There wasn't oh, you got to check one of these 3 boxes to go to jail for January 6th. Miss Enrique Torres, oh, he was a part of the Proud Boys. This man wasn't even in D.C. And the Proud Boys didn't do a damn thing at January 6th. They should, based on what the left does when they take over capitals and have been doing it since the 1960s, none of them damn people should have went to jail. Should have got a slap on the wrist the same way the leftists got a slap on the wrist. Well, they were going to kill Mike Pence. They took zip ties. They were going to take Nancy Pelosi hostage. Bunch of garbage lies. They made it up. And so if they wanted to put you down, they would have put you down. But they didn't want to put you down. And it raises questions, legitimate questions, and I need better answers. People need better answers. People need better answers, particularly to the stuff that Owen Benjamin and others are explaining and lining out as it relates to your own sexual deviance and jokes and comments and associations. People need explanations, man, real ones. And what you did with Alex Jones yesterday, I'm going to reiterate. It was tremendous. If that's people's first introduction to Nick Fuentes, they'll be like, oh, man, that guy will be president. And, you know, maybe we should pass a law that he could be president sooner than age 35. But I want to play these clips. I just can't believe I've gone on this long without playing any of them. But the last thing, and I want to switch, I want to make a completely different analogy, because this is what came to me this morning. When I think of Nick Fuentes, I think of the television show Game of Thrones. And I think of King Joffrey. And for those of you that watched Game of Thrones and King Joffrey, and let's switch the OTS, when you think of King Joffrey, sexual deviant, spoiled, entitled, just a weird dude that got married to some girl and tortured her and and the reason why I liked the first 3 or 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, because I think it was done intentionally as an analogy to try to explain to people globally what is really driving, motivating, who are the people in this desperate fight for world domination and world power. And so, hey, it's not my cup of tea. Some of you, the dragons, the flying dragons and all that, and going back to medieval times and all that, that's not my deal. You should watch the show. The show, particularly, now I'm telling you, the last 2 or 3 seasons were atrocious. People didn't figure it out till the last season. It was atrocious. But the people from HBO that were doing it, they got ahead of George R.R. Martin's books, and so they didn't know what they were doing, and they blew the ending. But the first 4 to 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, brilliant. And it will explain to you everything about the people at the WEF, NATO, Bridget Macron, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, Barack Obama. It'll explain all of them, what they will do for power and who they are. There were no good guys. One, Ned Stark, and he got killed in the first season. But everybody else, there's nothing, including sacrificing and killing their own children, they wouldn't do for power. And I look at Nick Fuentes, a very polished form of King Joffrey. And that's as hard a criticism as I've ever leveled at Nick Fuentes. And it's not done out of some sort of bitterness. It's done out of, hey, man, this is just what I see. It just doesn't add up for this kid to be getting this kind of heat, this kind of celebration, this type of influence. The path to this type of power, generally speaking, is through Epstein Island, some sort of Diddy party. It's through some sort of sexual deviance. You don't get here without it. This is King Joffrey. And I know, I'm an Alex Jones fan. I really like Alex Jones. I'm a supporter of Donald Trump. But the reality is, as it relates to Trump, when they get that close to killing you, it changes you. And when you get to a certain age and you got this beautiful 50-whatever-year-old wife and you want to spend some more time with her, and you got this young son, Barron, you want to spend some more time with him, and they let you know, like, hey, man, we missed at Butler, but we barely missed. And they're letting you know that not only will we kill you, we'll kill anybody close to you. It will change you. And so what Donald Trump was what he was able to be during that time frame. What he is now is what he's able to be during this time frame, and it is different. When you fully realize, like, man, I can't even trust the Secret Service. I can't trust the people I empower. I have to operate differently. And so when someone says no Epstein file, no Epstein file, make it go away. And as it relates to Alex, and I like Alex Jones, and I don't believe he's controlled by people. He may be controlled by his situation, the situation they put him in. When they take all of your money and on some bogus, hey, Sandy Hook, what Alex Jones said on his radio show destroyed my life. And so we got to take $1 billion from him. No, the people that killed your baby destroyed your life. Alex Jones had a bad opinion that really had no impact on your life. And I killed me for it. So, oh, he shouldn't have said it. But it shouldn't cost him $1 billion and destroy him. And so now that he's in this situation where they have financially destroyed him, got him going in and out of court, Alex Jones can't be the same guy that he was. That doesn't make him a bad guy. That doesn't make him a dishonest guy. Just makes him different. So let me get to some of these clips, and we'll start, and this is like a 5-minute clip because I want to be fair. But yesterday, Alex Jones asked Nick Fuentes the ultimate question about January 6th. He played Nick Fuentes' actions, and you heard the audio, and then he asked Nick Fuentes for an explanation. Play shot number 1.
This is the clip that has Tucker concerns. I want to play it so you can respond. Here it is. climb up on the highest statue or object, and you speak to the crowd.
Right. We did it in D.C. We did it at Million MAGA. There's pictures, videos. So somebody said, oh, this is an historic day. You got to give a speech. I said, well, find me a megaphone. So somebody, some orbiter, some fan of mine zips off, grabs a megaphone, brings it back. We look for the highest place. And that statue that you see me on there, that was Peace Circle. You could look at a map of the Capitol complex. It's 500 feet from the building. So, and I think that's a big part of the missing context is people look at that video, they see the speech, and they imagine maybe I'm like guiding people into the building. I was 500 feet away from the building. And so when I'm saying, take down the barricades, there were barricades on the lawn, which people were already on top of. There were barricades on the lawn in front of the Peace Circle, which that is what I was referring to. And I was saying, because the idea was, this is what the chatter on the ground was, we were going to protest on the lawn until they came back in session and gave Trump the election. The idea was this was like a protest. So when I said, we're going to hold the Capitol, it was like, we're not going to leave until...
Yeah, I said the same thing the weeks up to it. I said, we're going to peacefully, that was even... I think we even had a website, peacefully occupy the lawn until they actually have an investigation in Congress into the election fraud.
Exactly. And this is how this stuff goes. People don't realize when you're in the heat of the moment and there's no plan like that, there's just like this chatter that goes on the ground, and you get these ideas and, it's like a mob thing. And so you're there and we're saying to ourselves, okay, we're here on the Capitol complex. Mike Pence did not do what Trump wanted him to do. They shut down the session where they were counting the electoral votes. And we said, we're not going to leave until they, choose Trump in the election. That's the basis of the speech on Peace Circle. But then we start to get word that the cops are coming in heavy. We get word that special forces are coming in. They're throwing tear gas down on the lawn. So me and the whole group I was with, we said, let's get out of here. And so people like to say, oh, you sent people into the Capitol, but nothing happened to you. Every single person that was with me in that video did not get charged. That whole group of people, and by the way, we weren't on restricted grounds. The only people that got charged were people that were in the building.
But Nick, they did try to charge you. That was even, and I had the same lawyer. So I mean, and you've released the documents. They did subpoena you. They did come after you. They did call you before the Jan 6 committee. We have Bill Barr, and we should get to, and I don't want to spend the whole night on that. We've got a lot more to hit. But I actually have the clips of the whistleblower with the documents. Nick's name, my name, General Flynn. How they want to take us down for Jan 6, and then 2 years later, 2023, because you were still seen as a supporter of Trump then. And I already showed this Friday and already showed this Monday, but this is all right here. Project Veritas Part 2, whistleblower Bill Barr held secret meetings to plot prosecutions of Trump and block his political comeback. But the bigger story is, and what they thought was his biggest supporters, and Nick is on that. You don't get on the Bill Barr hit list if you're Ray Epps. Notice Ray Epps was not on the list.
I'm telling you, Nick Fuentes, impressive during this interview with Alex Jones. And Alex Jones helped him be impressive. This kid is a talent. He's, there's this thing that we say about Martin Luther King or Barack Obama, these talented orators. And I thought Martin Luther King was a super talented orator. I think Barack Obama was okay and overhyped. I think Nick Fuentes is a far better orator than Barack Obama. And he does this stuff off the top of his head. It's like if Donald Trump were a talented orator. Donald Trump is an authentic orator, and that makes him a successful orator. But he can't string together thoughts and sentences and for hours like Nick Fuentes can. I've watched some of his longer videos. This is an amazing orator, and that's why this guy is formidable, dangerous. This guy, his influence is going to continue to rise. because people love a talented orator, and he seems to have an answer for everything. Seems to. And he's getting placed in interviews where, he's complained about his interview with Candace Owens. It was harmless. His interview and conversation with Candace Owens was harmless. He looked composed and good and articulate. She looked like someone that was doing a adversarial interview to make sure that she had some protection and distance from Nick Fuentes. But she did no harm to Nick Fuentes. She actually elevated him, and I don't think that was her intention, but she did. This guy's a talented orator, and paired alongside Alex Jones, it came off real strong. But heard the answer. I've heard Nick give people have sent me a longer explanation of his. None of it makes sense to me. You can't, the kid that you write about in the Boston Globe at age 19, you write about his involvement in Charlottesville when he's, 21, 22, whatever. And now he gets involved, maybe even younger than that. He gets involved with January 6th. You write about that, but he's not a target of the left. And I hear Alex Jones saying, well, they were, but they did nothing to him. Skated on that completely. People sat in prison for 3 and 4 years for far, far less. I need a better explanation. And look, maybe his explanation makes total sense, and we'll get a better explanation. That is a possibility. But some of this other stuff, $250,000 in Bitcoin from some dude in France. I need an awesome explanation for that. And I need him to talk about how blessed he was. Let's say it's all legitimate. Talk about how blessed you were. Don't feed me this story about, boy, whole world's out to get me, except when they sent me $1 million in the mail for no reason. Need a far better explanation. And these things that Owen Benjamin's talking about, these things that this Chris Brunette are talking about, I need a detailed explanation. All right, welcome back. Sorry for the delay. We had a streaming freeze up. Let me see if I can pick up, maybe not where I left up, but give us a new starting point. I want to play Nick Fuentes telling Alex Jones yesterday that he just wants his ideas to be heard. Let's play SOT number 2.
I feel like for as long as I've been doing my show, for as long as I've been doing this, and as much as people talk about my motivations or who I really work for, this kind of stuff, all I've ever really wanted is for people to listen to my ideas. It's just to listen. And what I think really resonated with people when I clapped back on Tucker, it wasn't even so much, I spent 3 hours talking about the CIA and all this stuff. The part that resonated was the very end of the show, where I addressed the personal attacks. Because in addition to him insinuating that I work for intelligence or something like that, he said I'm a weird gay kid in a basement from Chicago. I'm a child. And in the clip that went viral on TikTok and Twitter, I said, did you forget when you did that part of your show that you're always pandering to the young white men? Isn't that kind of like the lead? Isn't that like the story of the past 10 years? Is the young white men who have no meaning in their lives, who are struggling to get married, who can't afford a home, who don't feel any allegiance to the country. They don't feel like they're a part of the country. There's no society. There's no social fabric. It's like, did you forget that, those are the people that you purport to care about? That you're trying to win over, you're defending their interests?
I think he makes an excellent point there, and as I've already said previously, his response to Tucker and Candace clever and appropriate, and I get it and understand it. I don't think Tucker has forgotten about those young people. I think he believes, it's speculation on my part, I haven't talked to him about it, but what I believe, you're leading those guys astray. Those guys, the Groypers, have legitimate concerns, justifiable concerns. We've created a society that has taught them and preached to them and wagged a finger at them that you're the worst people on the planet, that you're a source of evil and wickedness. And we've seen people in the mainstream media and all adopt this mentality that, hey, white men are the worst thing on the planet. They've destroyed the planet. They've created all this unfairness and oppression. And I don't blame them for being bothered by that and for being like, hey man, this is BS. We haven't been perfect. No one has been. But pointing a finger at us like we're the source of all wickedness and evilness and any bit of unfairness that anyone experiences, that's a joke. And it creates an opportunity for a Nick Fuentes to go tribal and to teach these guys that tribalism is the solution. When the reality is tribalism is the problem. And tribalism doesn't lead to salvation. And so Nick Fuentes is the wrong answer to a legitimate problem. He points at some of the problem, like, hey man, don't do this to young white guys. It makes us angry. It makes us irrational. It makes us adopt tactics and a mentality that are destructive and point us away from Christ. And again, this is why I've been hypercritical of the people that want to ignore Nick Fuentes and just hope it goes away while never dealing with the legitimate problems that he points out. And they are legitimate problems. And you can't have a demographic of people that say, hey, I'm a victim, and that means I can do whatever I want. If I want to go make a mess and a fool of myself and be violent towards people at Spirit Airlines, if I want to burn down buildings and loot and riot because I'm a victim, you can't say anything about it. That America cannot continue. It will create the kind of tribalism and bigotry and division that are tearing apart this country. We're not coming together over a group of values and ideas that uplift and benefit and edify all of us. We're coming together over skin color. Or, hey, we're all victims. Hey, let's come together because we're all victims. The gays, the blacks, the Jews, hey, we're going to form a coalition of victimhood. A coalition of victimhood leads to destruction and chaos. And so when Nick Fuentes jumps into, well, I'm going to tell the white man he's a victim. And we're going to join the coalition of victimhood. That's going to produce more chaos, more division, more destruction. And so the man has legitimate concerns. He's got the wrong answers. It's not more tribalism. And people are listening to his ideas. And I don't blame, I'm talking about black kids, white kids. Young men are listening to Nick Fuentes, and he's reveling in that. And if I were his age, I'd probably be reveling in it too. Hey, I've been, I've never been the cool kid. I was a book nerd in high school and in junior high. I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't this. And now I'm the cool kid, and people are listening to me, and I get it. But he's not responsible enough. And people are suggesting Tucker, but people even far more credibly and in a more detailed fashion are like, Nah, man, there's some identity issues here built around sex that have to be addressed. And if you notice, he talked around the whole sexuality issue as it related to Tucker Carlson. Never addressed it head on. And I'm not wagging a finger and saying, hey, this dude's gay. Leave him alone. That's not my suggestion. My suggestion is that dude's got some identity issues, and that needs to be fixed, resolved before he's any type of leader for young men. He can fix those. It's no different than if someone said, hey, Jason Whitlock, and I say it to myself every day, you got some eating issues, obesity issues that have to be fixed. That's a fair criticism. Can't run from that. That's why a dude calls me fat scum. Could care. I really couldn't even care about. I don't care about him being racist. And that sounds crazy to some of you. But at some point, I hope you get far enough in your journey, in life, in a biblical worldview, that you'll understand that this racism, anti-Semitism, but these things that have been set up is like, well, you can't enter the kingdom of God unless you love black people and Jews. I haven't found that anywhere in the Bible. I know y'all say Genesis 12:3 as it relates to Jews. I don't read it that way. And I get love thy neighbor, blah, 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 but all this, hey, we've set up being black or Jew as the ultimate litmus test. How you feel about blacks and Jews says everything about you. I don't remotely buy it. How you feel about Jesus Christ says a lot about you to me. Do with that what you will, but that's where I stand. And those of you that don't stand with me but call yourself Christians, I'm looking at you with a side eye. What you scared of? It's as a Christian, I got to walk around on eggshells because I believe Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and I question those that don't accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. I got to walk around on eggshells for feeling that way. Not gonna happen. I want to play this Cartier family clip, and then I got one other clip I want to play. But the Cartier family clip is important because it speaks about the pervasiveness, effectiveness, the acceptance of Nick Fuentes with young men. Because I'm not the only one that's pointing out, like, hey, man, the young men that I mentor, involve myself with, just talk with, they're all reacting to Nick Fuentes. They all have some sort of attraction to Nick Fuentes and his message. And we can't keep ignoring this and thinking, we're going to just hold another conference somewhere and some group meeting and it's all going to go away. It's not. He's resonating with young people, including young black men. Let's play SOT number 5.
There's got to be one real nigga. Can the real please stand up? There has to be one real left in America, in this damn country. Are there any real niggas left that actually got censored and banned on YouTube? Where's the real niggas? And I'll die just to inspire another generation of them. I'll tell you who's a real nigga. Kanye West. Ye is a real nigga. I'm another kid from Chicago like him. I'm a real nigga. And I know that with everything I've done to this point, notwithstanding whatever happens tomorrow or the next day or any other day, I know there's 1,000 real niggas that are inspired by watching the show. And they may have a lot of people fooled. Maybe in the end of it, they'll have a lot of people fooled. Maybe they'll get you to think I'm a horrible person, whatever. I know there's at least 1,000 real-ass niggas that watch the show, are smart enough to understand what I'm saying. They're going to take this information, and they're going to blow up the second Death Star, whether I'm here to see it or not.
The Death Star is funny.
That's the game.
That's funny.
I just don't think, hey, the people out there, if you get offended by that, but then you go and you listen to rap and they talk about killing each other and they really do it, then that you stepping over pennies to pick up, or you stepping over dollars to pick up pennies.
I mean, you would have to be an extreme snowflake to get upset over.
Oh, there's plenty of people who gonna be upset about that, bro. You know them.
I don't know, man. I think he kept it real, man.
He kept it real.
He's real.
Only a real nigga gonna say he kept it real.
Hey, man, he kept it real. Like, he's undeniably stayed true to his point and
He's
unwavered since the day that I first even discovered him. And I think the more and more I listen to him and the more and more I grow and mature as a man, I think he's right. Like, he just makes a lot of points. Now, do I agree with everything he says? No, but that's naturally. I'm not a person that agrees with everyone, but I think a lot of what he says is undeniably the truth.
He's winning. And these, well, you know what? We're just going to go out and teach a better form of dispensationalism. That'll fix it. Not going to fix it. It's not going to fix it. Cat's out of the bag. And we're going to have conversations that Thomas Massey's been promoting, Marjorie Taylor Greene's been promoting, Tucker's been promoting, and you're going to get called names, and you're going to have, and it may cost you money. It might cost you money, but unless we're willing to have those conversations, he's going to continue to keep winning, and he's going to become an even more and more powerful force in American politics, in global politics. As I started out the show telling you about, like, this dude was 21 and he played a role in Joe Kent not getting elected in Washington into the House. He, at January 6th, and someone has allowed him to completely skate on that. He's winning the Trump argument right now. He has walked away from MAGA, and that's been very frustrating. That was a big part of the reason why Alex Jones had him on yesterday, is because it's not that Trump needs him for his next election, but whoever Trump's successor is going to need Nick Fuentes and that energy and the young people he brings to the table, the young men he brings to the table. They're going to need him. And they're negotiating with someone who, until I get some better answers, I'm going to be suspicious of, you should be suspicious of, and need. Let me play this last clip of him and Alex Jones talking about Donald Trump. And again, when I say Nick Fuentes was very impressive yesterday with Alex Jones, this is one of the main clips I'm pointing to. Let's play shot number 4.
Stop the Democrats, block them 100%, try to get good Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others in, build our beachhead, support Trump where he's doing good, try to put pressure on the administration and expose bad actors where we can, where we've already had a lot of effect. We know it has an effect. To me, taking the ball and going home, I'm not saying you've done that, but saying, I'm done with Trump 2 years ago, you warned of the Israel thing, you were right about that, I get that. Isn't it when it's the only thing we got, try to then even more jump on it to like try to get it to do what we want? I mean, it's threading the needle there, but do you get where I'm going?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And I think I used to be more of that mindset in the very beginning in like 2017, 2018. But look, it's been 10 years. Trump came down the escalator 10 years ago. And I look at where we are now in the White House, and it's like, look, they backed down on the deportations in February. In February, they said it's not going to be mass deportations. And by the way, I know you are 100% right. When you say ICE does not have the personnel. That is a fact. They do not have the personnel. They do not have the infrastructure, the funds. They're spinning it up. It takes time. I get all that. You're 100% right. But from the top in February, they said, we're not going after the farm workers. We're not going after the construction workers because that's going to hurt the economy. And the situation with Iran, we go from we're not going to get involved to we are to we're bombing them to, well, we're going to support regime change maybe if it comes from the bottom up. And it's like here we are 10 years later and NATO has gotten stronger. You know, NATO's spending more money. We're bombing Iran. Greater Israel is literally within sight. They're annexing Gaza and the West Bank. You have the Epstein files being covered up. There's no accountability for the Democrats, for Clinton, Obama. There's no hearings. There's no charges. There's no nothing. And so it's like 10 years later, you got to say, look, this is not the revolution that was promised. This is not the accountability, the anti-corruption, the make America great again. We didn't get what we were promised. Now, there's kind of like two things that we can conclude from that. In the first place, we have to express our dissatisfaction. I am not of the mind that it is helping anything to be on Twitter, like, and I'm not saying this is you, but other people say, no matter what Trump does, we have to support it. You have been critical when it matters. There are so many people that say, no, just trust the plan. It's all going to work out. No, at the minimum, we have to express our dissatisfaction. If Trump will ever deliver anything good, it is because he needs to please his base. He needs to please his base to win elections, to win the midterms, to have political capital. So at the minimum, we need to charge him for that and say, if you want our support, you got to make us happy. That's one. But two, this is maybe the more radical side of me, says, I feel like even the idea that we're in this game where we're fighting for the personnel and, you know, we're on Twitter, please, Trump, don't do this. Please, Trump, do that. It feels like we're on a hamster wheel. It feels like a big diversion. It feels like we're negotiating with ourselves. And we're sort of saying to ourselves, oh, you know, we're in this fight. We're fighting this uphill battle. But it's like, let's be honest. Trump has cucked out every time it has mattered. In the first term, we didn't get a wall, so we got 10 million illegals 4 years later. In the first term, Trump made the vaccine, and then we got the vaccine mandate. It's like this stuff keeps happening. And my kind of game theory is to say, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is insane. You know, if we keep doing these things and the chance of them succeeding is zero, let's just try something else. That's why I have always been a proponent of saying, let's just stay home. Let's have a protest candidate. Let's run somebody like Ye.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you right there, and I want you to finish up and elaborate. I just want to say, I totally agree with you, and
that when that portion ended, and I was watching this not live but last night, and because Alex Jones' whole deal, because I could have played more on the front end, but it was just like he's bothered, like, hey man, we can't abandon Trump. We gotta, you know, we're getting everything we want from Trump. No, but it's better than the alternative. And why aren't you pointing your guns at the Democrats? And then for that to end with Alex Jones saying, you know what? I agree with you. Nick Fuentes is formidable. He's, you know, we went through this deal where Barack Obama, he's this generational political force of nature. That was all manufactured by the media. Barack Obama is not some brilliant orator. Barack Obama is a relatively good-looking, half-black, half-white guy. And he spoke decently. What you're seeing from Nick Fuentes, that's a brilliant politician, orator. He's just 26. He just went toe-to-toe with Alex Jones and had Alex Jones eaten out of his hand. This young dude, he's super talented. I also think he's misguided. And I also think he's been prepared and groomed for this moment. And I'm not sure if his agenda has anything to do with true salvation, spiritually, or for America. Where this is going to end up, in my view, right now, at the moment, and I'm going to dig deeper. I've already got a note back. I believe on Monday we'll have a guest. I'll tape an interview. We may either tape it or present it live on Monday with a guy that's done a long piece looking into the shadiness and sexual deviance allegations against Nick, Bueckers, and that whole deal. But this guy has been prepared, groomed, positioned to be a major force in American politics and global politics. He is what they said Barack Obama was. He is what, and again, obviously, Stephen A. Smith, light years away from Nick Fuentes. Stephen A. Smith is an idiot. They've handed a thesaurus, and that's it, knows nothing. But Nick Fuentes can talk global politics, rolling out of bed, doesn't need a script, is as smooth as anything we've ever seen. Once I gather a bit more information, a bit of deeper understanding, I think I'm already to the point where I want to reach out to Nick Fuentes and just talk to him personally, to ask him questions. I'm pretty sure I got to be a bit more prepared before I would want to interview Nick Fuentes. I certainly don't want to debate Nick Fuentes. I'm no sort of politician, but probe, interview, try to understand. I think it's important. I think it's necessary. This whole little gimmick of ignoring him doesn't work. And look, he may have no interest in engaging with me. He seems like he enjoys name calling, that's a safer route for him as it relates to me. Just name call and let his Groiper trolls troll me or whatever. But I'm just trying to get up to speed, trying to tell you what I'm thinking in real time, trying to tell you where my instincts are taking me, trying to point you directions like, hey, did you know this? Did you know that? The 250,000 in free Bitcoin in 2020, you know, don't hand me this victim garbage. Did you get $1 million from some dying guy in France that didn't know you? I didn't. You know, I'm disaffected and I've been mistreated my whole life, except when $1 million dropped into my lap from out of nowhere. And yeah, I like to make jokes about being a homo and about liking young kids, but it's all just jokes. This is what, you know, you run around Christ is king, but you're joking about being a homo, you're joking about liking young kids, underage kids. I gotta have better answers before I'm willing to hop on board and just look the other way. I'm out of steam. We'll do As the WNBA Turns tomorrow. Sorry about the freeze up in the middle of the show. Hope it didn't ruin it for you. Hope you enjoyed today's show. We'll play tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free.